Good evening, everybody. Daniel Sherman here. Wanted to talk about some of my favorite lawyer movies. I get this question a lot. As an attorney, what movies do I like? What are the most accurate movies? So I'm going to give you kind of a few, and I'll give you my favorite one last. But I'll give you a few that I think are really good. Um, I'll start off with Legally Blonde. I know that sounds kind of, odd and a weird choice, but that came out when I was in law school, and it is exactly what law school is. And in fact, the books that they used, I remember we were watching it in some of my law school classmates were like, "Hey, that's our civil procedure book. That's our constitutional law book." So it was very accurate. If you want to know what law school's like, Legally Blonde is a really good example of it. You do when you show up your first day. You're given assignments. I'll tell you this: we had an ice storm in Lexington um, in 2003 February, and the school was closed for a couple days. In UK, closing is almost unheard of, and we actually had to make up the classes. We had to make them up on Saturday. That's how serious law school is. And so I think when she goes in and she's unprepared and she's kicked out of the classroom, that's we had a professor who would do that. We had a professor that you showed up on time. Class started, I think, at 9 o'clock. She usually would shut the door at 9 o'clock, and then if door was shut, it was locked. You didn't come in. But one time she forgot to shut it, and then somebody came in at like 9:02, 9:03, and she kicked him out. She said, "I'm sorry, you're late. Leave my classroom." So that does happen. So I think Legally Blonde is really good. Another one doesn't really get a lot of attention for me. Is It's called A Civil Action. It's with Robert Duvall and John Travolta. I think it does a really good job of, if you're into heavy litigation, civil cases, kind of what it's like, the expenses, having experts, even there's some trial and some courtroom etiquette that you deal with there. But I really did like the movie A Civil Action. I thought it was really well done. Another one is Rainmaker. Rainmaker, if you are a lawyer that just passed the bar, like uh, Matt Damon's character in that movie, hadn't even been sworn in yet, had to be sworn in by the judge and vouched for, as he says, by a scoundrel. Um, that's, when you're first starting practice and you thrown to the wolves, that's what it's like. Especially if you know nothing about procedure. And if you have a chance to watch that movie again, watch how many times Matt Damon really messes it up. And, thankfully, he gets, Danny Glover becomes the judge later on and kind of helps him a little bit. And you will get, I think it also shows, some judges are, um, more lenient. They're more likely to help younger lawyers, whereas the first judge on the case was not. He was kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy, I get off my docket kind of dude. So that is a good one. Before I do my other ones, I guess I'll give a couple honorable mentions. Um, a Few Good Men's, is really good. I really wish they would have shown the closing argument in A Few Good Men, because you never got to see it. You just got to see where he cross-examined Colonel Jessup. He's arrested, and then then the jury goes back and deliberates. But what did he say in closing? For me, I thought that would have probably made the movie better, but it's not to be. The Verdict with Paul Newman's a good one. There's some pretty heavy evidence rules in that one. And so if you're really interested in trial procedure and evidence issues, that was a really good movie for it. A few TV shows that I really like. Boston Legal, I thought was great, and it really was just kind of William Shatner and James Spader, banter back and forth. I think that really made that show. It wasn't very, true to, lawyers. There's another one. I think it's called. It was on for a few seasons. It's called The Guardian. It's about a guy who, was arrested on drug charges, and as opposed to going to jail, he had to volunteer as a guardian. They had lied to him, and that was, I think, really good, because you represent children, and as an attorney, we're all on a list, and a lot of other attorneys are, that you get appointed to represent children. And I thought that did a really good job of, explaining really the social service system, how family courts treat children, and, some of the deficits and some of the benefits of it. I think it's called The Guardian. It's a really good show. The guy who's on The Mentalist, the main character, he's in that. So I don't know if you watch The Mentalist, but my favorite movie, as far as lawyers are concerned, is, I think far and away, not just for accuracy, but for laughs, My Cousin Vinny. It really, has it all. Vinny, it's his first case. He's got his sidekick, Mona Lisa Vito. It goes into expert testimony. It goes into trial procedure. It goes into jurors. It goes into witnesses. It goes into, a judge not being, very patient with somebody. The arraignment process, the preliminary hearing process, the voir dire. I mean, now they didn't get to do a closing on that. They did an opening, but they didn't get to do a closing because, they dismissed the charges. But one of these days I'm going to do on My Cousin Vinny and an opening and say, everything that guy said is, bullshit, and sit down and say thank you, because that's the only thing the judge allowed in the record. For me, My Cousin Vinny was by far and away the best lawyer movie. It's got it all. It's got the humor. It's got, good acting. Marisa Tomei won Best Supporting Actress. It's got humor. It's, got a really interesting story in it. It's got a couple storylines that are really great about him, getting the $200 that, his fiance had hustled away. Is he going to get caught for, only being licensed for, 6 weeks, never tried a case. He was lying to the judge. There's quite a few storylines, and they kind of all converge at the end. And, it's a satisfying ending. And, I think in the end, what she says is the best, when he's like, I'm going to marry you, I guess, since I won my first case. And she looks at him and she says, you're an effing loser. You couldn't even win the case by yourself. You had to have help. I'm not going to marry you. So for me, I thought that was a great line, and Marisa Tomei was certainly deserving of the Best Supporting Actress in that. So that's my favorite lawyer movie. I don't, maybe one will come out in the next however many years that will be better. But for me, there's not one that's really even close. So hope you all enjoyed this. It's not really factual, but it's if you haven't seen those movies, see those movies. They're all, I think they're all really good, and y'all have a good night.